I'm using made-up names for both of us. I'll call myself Evan and my partner Lena, and the date that started everything happened in the summer of 2017. We had been together just long enough to settle comfortably into routines, work, dinner, late-night walks, but still curious and restless enough to chase little thrills on weekends. That's how we ended up at the Whaley House in San Diego, a place with decades of whispered stories attached to it, the kind of destination that shows up on every local list of most haunted places you can visit. I had always thought of it as a tourist thing, something you walk through, snap a few pictures of, and forget about. I never expected anything real. Yet the unease began the moment we stepped into the old courtroom on the main floor. I felt a weight in the air, a coldness pressing down on my shoulders from above, as if the ceiling was slightly lower than it looked. No obvious cause, no draft, no visible vent, just a heaviness that settled itself deep into my ribs. Upstairs, in the narrow hallway lined with bedrooms, the sensation shifted sharply into something more jagged. My vision tightened. The wooden floorboards seemed to hold an energy underneath them, a faint vibration radiating from their age. Every part of the house felt awake, aware, watching. I moved faster through the rooms than I meant to, not wanting to seem spooked but unable to shake the instinct that none of the stillness inside was natural. When I noticed the skin on my legs tightening in goosebumps, I ignored it. When I saw that Lena had the same posture, rigid shoulders, arms tucked close to her body, I ignored that too. But the energy followed us. Not the storytelling, not the atmosphere, not the history, something else entirely. By the time we got back to the car, my hands were trembling. The kind of tremble that starts so subtly you don't realize it's happening at first. The kind that comes from adrenaline with nowhere to go. I blamed it on the place messing with my head. Old houses do that. They sink into your imagination and stir up impressions like dust. That's all it had to be. Except the feeling didn't fade. When we got home that night, the air in the apartment felt sharp, charged with a pressure I couldn't name. The living room lights flickered once as we walked in. It wasn't unusual. The building had issues, but the timing carved its own edge in my thoughts. I tried to distract myself by settling into the couch, scrolling through my phone, convincing myself I needed sleep. The tremble in my hands became a faint vibration in my arms, then in my legs, and soon my whole body carried a hum of alertness as if bracing for movement. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it came in fractured pieces, short, sharp segments of dark. Each time I drifted off, something pulled me back awake. No reason, no sound, just the quiet sense that I wasn't alone in the room. The shadows felt deeper than usual, layered. My breathing echoed in my skull. I stayed awake most of the night without meaning to, my heart working far harder than my stillness justified. The next morning, the kitchen felt slightly off-kilter. Objects weren't where we had left them. A stack of glasses on the counter had shifted to the opposite side of the sink. The small jar of sugar, which normally sat snugly between the coffee can and the salt, had moved an inch closer to the stovetop. None of it was dramatic. None of it could be called impossible. But all of it was wrong. I told myself I must have moved things without noticing. People lose track of what they do half asleep all the time. But the arguments I constructed in my head felt flimsy and insubstantial, as if I was layering excuses to keep something much simpler from surface recognition. The following night stripped those defenses away. It began with the hallway light flickering just once, a quick blink. Enough to catch my attention, but not enough to provoke alarm. I was brushing my teeth, exhausted, wanting nothing more than to pass out. But then the bathroom door pushed inward 3 inches with a soft, decisive motion. Not a full swing, not a slam, just a steady pressure, like a deliberate step forward. The air behind me tightened against my back. My entire spine stiffened. I shut the water off and waited, holding my breath as my reflection in the mirror stared back with wide, confused eyes. The door did not move again. I stepped into the hallway, and the lights flickered for a second time. A longer second. Then the air dropped abruptly in temperature, enough to make the skin on my arms contract instantly. It was like walking through a dense, invisible pocket of winter. Not a draft, not an AC vent, a pocket. The lights went out completely. I froze in place, listening. The silence carried pressure, as though it were filled with vibration I couldn't hear, but could feel in the back of my skull. When the lights finally snapped back on, the hallway seemed slightly different. Not changed, tilted, as if the distance between objects had subtly altered. Later that night, while we tried to sleep, something scraped the floor. A sharp drag. Not near the bed, not close enough to hear through half-dreaming confusion. It came from the living room, a slow, steady scrape. Then a pause, then another. I lay there, adrenaline shooting through my veins like electricity, forcing myself to remain still. The sound stopped only after the air in the room shifted again. Another drop in temperature, another invisible pocket tightening around the walls. The next morning brought something I couldn't reason away. The kitchen chairs had all turned slightly toward the hallway. Not the table, not the plates, not a stack of napkins. Just the chairs, each angled by the same degree, as if all four had pivoted toward the center of the apartment during the night. The trembling in my limbs began again. It didn't stop. Over the next days, the activity escalated. The air caught pressure in strange pockets around the home, tightening my chest as I walked from room to room. I began to feel watched. Not generically, not vaguely, but with the specific sensation of a pair of unseen eyes tracking my movements with silent patience. Shadows flickered in peripheral vision, even when there was no light source behind them. Objects shifted small distances only when we weren't looking. But the worst part wasn't the noise or the movement. It was the sense of draw. The feeling that something wanted attention focused on it, wanted energy, wanted recognition. It created a pull, a subtle tug on my thoughts, interrupting tasks, derailing routines, mesmerizing me into long stretches of staring at nothing. My mind would fog over, drifting. I'd snap out of it only when a cold tingle spread across my shoulders, the same sensation I'd felt in the Whaley House, as if something had leaned close enough to brush against my skin. One night, while lying in bed, I felt weight settle onto the mattress, not the entire weight of a body, but the faint, unmistakable pressure of someone placing a hand on the edge of the bed. Not a creak, not a shift, a press. I didn't move. The weight remained for 3 long seconds, then lifted away in one smooth motion. My breathing hitched, my body locked. For several minutes afterward, the air in the room felt rigid, as if forming a pressure around my chest. I stayed awake until morning, unable to close my eyes without feeling the memory of the weight replaying repeatedly. Over the next week, the poltergeist-like activity intensified in patterns that seemed more deliberate. Not random knocks, not accidental shifts, intentional interaction. A picture frame slid 3 inches across the shelf directly in front of me. No breeze, no vibration, just a slow, steady glide. A cabinet door in the hallway bathroom opened halfway on its own, inch by inch. I watched it as if hypnotized, feeling anchored to the spot by invisible hooks. A locked window rattled in its frame despite the total stillness outside. Every object moved in small, calculated motions, as if communicating, not haunting, as if responding to some unspoken sequence of our actions. At night, the mattress would shake subtly, not violently, but with a faint, rhythmic tremor that travelled through the frame, a vibration that matched the tension building in the air. Whatever this was, It had followed us home. Or maybe it had attached itself at the house. But the most intense moment came 2 weeks in, during a night that hangs in my memory like a smear of adrenaline and static. It began with the lamp on the bedside table dimming slightly, the light dropping to a low amber glow without any physical touch. The room took on a shadowed quality, the corners growing darker than they should have been. My breathing quickened. The air vibrated, carrying a hum I could feel in my ribs. Something tightened against the mattress, the faintest ripple of motion. Then the entire frame shook once, not violently, not enough to cause damage, but enough for the whole room to shift with it, a quick, sharp jolt that felt like a command for attention. The room's air grew heavier, compressing inward. I sat upright, feeling my heartbeat reverberate in my skull. The shadows near the closet seemed to pulse, as though holding density. Something cold moved past my feet, brushing against my skin like the faint drag of fingers across bare flesh. I forced myself to breathe through it. Another vibration travelled through the mattress, this time slower, beginning at the foot of the bed and moving upward with deliberate progression. My entire body froze. My muscles tightened involuntarily. And then, abruptly, something broke. Not physically, not enough to cause damage, atmospherically. A shift in pressure, rapid and complete, as though the invisible tension in the room suddenly snapped. The air surged warm for a second, then clear. My heartbeat slowly steadied. The shadows regained normal proportions. The hum in the air eased into quiet. For the first time in weeks, the space felt empty. The days that followed were quieter. No shifting objects. No cold pockets. No vibrations moving through the mattress. No sense of eyes following me from room to room. The silence didn't feel suppressed or waiting. It felt natural. The apartment held its ordinary stillness again, and yet the memory remains, a dense, heavy imprint on the mind. I still don't understand what we experienced, and I've avoided filling the blanks with superstition or fantasy. Everything that happened was real, physical, things we saw, felt, and lived through. Maybe the energy from the Whaley House was stronger than we realized. Maybe impressions cling to people under the right conditions. Maybe heightened awareness invites a response. Or maybe old spaces and old stories absorb emotion and release it unpredictably into those sensitive enough to feel it. I've searched for answers in quiet moments, replaying every detail. The weight on the mattress, the dragging sound on the floor, the subtle shifts of objects, the pressure in the air that moved like a presence with intention. Each memory holds shape, but no clear explanation. So, if anyone seeing this has an idea of what we experienced, or how something like this can be understood or resolved, I'd genuinely like to know.